and you're all self-taught. You didn't do
Correct.
any of this
Yeah.
process, university or online course, you are self-taught?
No. I'm self-taught, and you know, I share that at shows when people ask me sometimes, if I've gone to school. And I know there's so many artists out there that did go to school and they have degrees in art. And um, you know, I'm kind of I try to stay humble that way as far as um, you know, how I've brought myself up in art. I don't like to just say, "Hey, I'm Tony and I'm a self-taught artist." I don't like to boast it that way, because I want people to enjoy the art. I don't want them to think, "Well, this guy's really full of himself. He thinks he's amazing and great." So I'd like to I want to let my artwork speak for itself more than anything else. I don't want it to seem like I'm coming off as arrogant, and it could, I did have an experience when I was just getting into artwork, and I will not share the artist's name. Um, it was somebody that was very well known in the art community, but he saw my work and he said, "Don't do pencil. Pencil will never sell. It's never going to work. You should probably just give up on that and maybe try something else." And I look back at that and go, I really that hurt me a lot. And I also said, "Hey, my goal is I'm never gonna be like this guy. I'm gonna be, when people ask me questions or if they want help or whatever, I'm gonna help them, because I don't want to be like that. If somebody really enjoys art and they want to excel and be in it, that's great. We're all supposed to be, together in community. And I have at home, I have photographs and paintings from many different artists that I grew up respecting. And I would hope that they would think that, hey, this guy respects my artwork. He has it on his walls, and I just never wanted. I don't want to ever be that way. And I did have an incident recently where I caught myself. I'm like, oh, hey, this will go against what what you sought to be, is an artist that will always help no matter what. And I thought about it and I said, hey, this person's enjoy it. And that's the number one thing. If you enjoy it, then you should be encouraged. You should never be knocked down about it. And that's what, I went back to that and I thought, yeah, this is exactly what happened to me, and I don't want to do this to somebody else. But the person did come off a little. It was a tough situation, I think in both ends. But looking back at it now, I hope that I did good. I hope and I hope I didn't come off like that other person did to me. So that was
Uh,
a little long. Yeah.
navigating human conversations and interactions is a lost art form. Sometimes it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was all over Facebook too. Like, it was through Facebook. I shouldn't say all over Facebook. It was through Facebook that we had the interaction, and it's different than, face to face. Like you said, it's becoming a lost art. So it was different it was a social media thing, because nowadays you go to a restaurant and you have a bad experience and you post a review and it's out there. It's out there. And if they want to bash you, they're going to bash you. And and I hope that that there's not any of that out there for me. I mean, I know there's people out there that maybe don't like me, and not everyone's going to like me, and I understand that. I understand that now more than I did before, but not everyone's going to like you or like your art, and that's fine. I've come to the realization that's fine. If they like my stuff, that's great. If they like somebody else's stuff, that's great. You know, um, if you years ago, I thought you either like paintings or you like drawings or photographs or all of it. There's nothing that says, well, you can't like that. So
I can already sense, like, you're not out there to make a name for yourself or put a name on something and claim it as your own. You're just out here, like you said, you're sharing that love in the community with so many different aspects, and that's what I've tried to do on the channel. Is we've had the divers come on, I've had Rick come on, who's dove the Fitzgerald. I've had Wayne Lusardi with the Michigan State Department, and we've talked about artifacts, and there's all these different angles that come into a shared love and passion for this, and bringing you on as well. Like, I don't sense anything. What could nitpicking aside like that? It's nitpicking the number of rivets on a ship is like what I feel like they'd have to do with you to find something. You're in it because you love it, and we all should love it at the
Mhm.
same time, and keep it alive and growing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, I guess, as you as you age, you hopefully mature a little bit more. Like I said, when and like you said, you said I'm not out to make a name for myself. Well, I kind of am. I mean, with my art, I'd like to become a respected artist in the maritime community, not just in
With
the
a
Great
good
Lakes, but
humbly, I
in a
think you're
good
doing
way.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to do it in a good way. And there are times where you maybe just don't come off that way. And for those times there's nothing else I can say, but I got to apologize for that. But I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm not going to apologize for that. If I come off as a little passionate, or maybe too passionate, it's because I care about what I do. And I hope that others enjoy what I do, and so, but yeah, sometimes it can be, where you seem a little pushy maybe, but I'd like people to see my work as well, because I watch a lot of documentaries, and I see a lot of different art that's on documentaries, and I say, hey, I wish they'd reach out to me because I might have something to offer to them. um and they could use my artwork, and I don't have any problems with, a lot of people like, well, this is going to cost this much to use my painting or my my photograph and like that. And to me, if they want to share my artwork, I am more than willing to help out. The well I donate pieces to fundraisers, things like that. The Whitefish Point, the Maritime Museum up there, they just had their annual meetings, and they did a silent auction, and and a lot of that goes towards funding shipwreck searches, where they go out and they go look for shipwrecks that have been lost for 100 years, and they're trying to find, and they need money to go out and do it. I just did a drawing of the Western Reserve. They finally found it after how many countless decades, over 100 years, and I finally had a reason to draw that, so I did. And I actually shared, I saw that the meeting was coming up, and I emailed Bruce Lynn at the museum, and I asked them if they'd be interested in, a signed, framed copy print of that. And, absolutely. So I set it up there for their, not wanting anything in return. I don't ask for, hey, it's going to cost you this much for me to get that there. No, it goes there, and it helps raise money for their fundraising efforts for what they need to do. I'm happy to do that. That's it's not something that I'm requiring you to pay me for what I have. Stuff like that. I'm more than willing to help out. Um, you know, Granted, it can sometimes maybe if I say that now, but all of a sudden everybody's gonna go, "Hey, Tony will give us anything we want." That might become a problem. But I'm willing to help out that way, and it not only it gets my name out there, also along with doing that.
Yeah,
So that's something that I like to do, and yeah, I want to get my name out there, absolutely, but I don't want it to become where, oh God, here's
don't
Tony
let it go
again.
to your head.
You know,
Don't
yeah, exactly. I don't want to be like that. So
egomaniac. No, and that's why I was hoping you'd say yes to this interview because I hope it helps. I hope it brings some good traffic your way and some good attention, and you definitely deserve it. You've put the work in. You've
well,
put
thank
the
you.
yeah. No, you've put the work in. You've put the heart and passion into it, which that leads me into one of my perfect segue into another um, good wrap up question, but another one that is really big on my heart is so what would you say to let's just say a younger viewer, younger person right now who also loves art? That could be painting, it could be drawing like you. What would you say to somebody who's trying to get into this? A younger person who enjoys
Yeah.
maybe doesn't even have to be just Great Lakes Maritime drawing, but somebody who likes drawing, what would you say from a kinda like a mentor to a younger person right now? What would you say for them for that?
Well, I think number one is if you enjoy it, keep at it. And draw what you love, or paint or whatever. Do what you love to do. Don't let anybody tell you that, well, no, you can't do that. You have to do this. I mean, obviously if you're going to go to art school, you're going to have to do other things. That's just what you do in art school. You don't specifically focus, I think, on what you want to do with your career. You learn about a bunch of things. But for those that are self-taught, or want to do it the way I've done it, my number one thing is to say is don't give up on it. I was very close to doing that. My first show I ever did in 2011, Marquette, Michigan. And I often bring this up because it was a point where I could have walked away from it, and it was a fine art show, and the not the show that I should have gotten into for my first show ever, because and when you saw my booth at Ludington, that is the process of 15 years of tooling and trying things out, displaying different ways, but that very first show was a spectacular failure. It was bad. I mean, I had some artwork with me. I didn't have the capability of doing many prints, so I didn't have many of those. I didn't have a lot of frame stuff. My dad he started out building my frames for me. Uh, and he's a good woodworker, and he did it for a number of years. In fact, I do all my own frame building myself, but he has a lot of barnwood that he created the barnwood moldings for me. But I look at that and I go, man, I didn't have the artwork, and I look at that and I look back at that now, and I remember my dad was with me for that very first show, and he told me, don't give up. They had a woodcraft business for 25 years, my mom and my dad. And so they had experience at shows. They knew what it was and they knew what they were like. But he told me, don't give up on this. Learn from what you did here. Learn from it and try to make it better. But he says, don't give up on it. He goes, you're too good to give up on it. I remember that. And that made me feel good. And I thought, okay, well, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And it was, the next year I entered 4 shows, and the first show I did, I was amazed by, just from that little bit of retooling, what I could sell. And I sold some original pieces, and it made me feel so good. But so that again, don't give up. Don't give up on it. That's the number one thing I could say. Um, for young artists too, um, they look at maybe some stuff that I've done and say, well, I'll never get like that. I said, well, realize how long it's taken to be able to do the
It's
drawings
not
I do?
overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight. No, it takes a lot of practice and trial and error. A lot of my work comes from trial and error. And I don't know if a lot of people understand that. A lot of it's just trying something out. And if it doesn't look right to me, I'll move on and try something else. Um, I have to give a shout out to a young man that he I'll show you a picture of this. His name is Xander, and I don't want to, just to keep kind of confidential. I don't want to share his full name, but so I'm in Port Huron, and he comes in. His mom comes in with him, and he's got a folder, and he introduced himself, and his mom said he's got something for you. I said, oh, really? So he gave me this folder, and inside of it was that picture of the Paul Archer Gertha. And he said, he says, I'm a really big fan of your artwork, and I love what you do. And he says, you're a really big inspiration to me. And, I wanted to give you this drawing I did of the Paul Archer Gertha. And that touched me. I just couldn't believe it. Even now I think about that, and um, that was really something that, I inspired somebody else to draw something and draw a ship, uh and so I gave it to him. I said, I'm going to put this right up in my studio, and it's been in both of my studios, so that it's up on the wall too. And there was one right there too. He did at the Arthur M. Anderson in a storm, and so they're right next to each other, and I have those on my wall. Those are really cool things to have. That, hey, this young man was really inspired by what I did, and he wanted to do it. And he shared some stuff with me. He's kind of, I don't want to say moved on from drawing, but he's a kid, and life is starting to get in the way. So he's growing up and focusing on some other things, and but I thought that was I hope he continues with it. It was a very touching thing for me to have somebody else come in and say that I inspired them. It felt so good.
That's I mean, I can't think of anything better than that. I mean, and at
Yeah.
that point, you were his I wanna say, well, like you said, like, role model, or he looked up to you. He wanted to get your approval on that, and I think that that was incredible. That's exactly what I wanted to hear and was hoping for, and hopefully
Mhm.
that does inspire more people, at least in the Great Lakes region and wherever else, but, like, maybe we can still get more people drawing lighthouses and ships and
Yeah,
whatnot, like,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Okay, I got one very last question, and then
Okay,
I promise. And then I just want to where people can reach you, where they can find you, how they can help support you,
okay.
and anything you got coming up here. We can end on a strong note. Um,
Okay.
Last question here: do you ever draw a ship as it's sinking, or do you or like a wreck on the bottom? Have you ever done that, maybe, or have you ever done thought about doing that, maybe, or like a mid being sunk?
Well, there's a couple things that I don't do. One is showing a ship blasted apart on the bottom or resting on the bottom as a shipwreck. And I know there is definitely artists out there that when they discover shipwrecks that they want an archaeological site drawing, and I understand that, but they haven't reached out to me to do that, so that's not something I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on wrecks on the bottom. I want to show ships in their prime, doing what they were meant to do. Not always in happy circumstances, maybe, in rough seas, things like that. But I also don't have any interest in drawing ships either splitting apart and I have done it. I've done commissions. I've done a few commissions of certain things. I did do one of the Daniel J. Morel breaking in half. It was for somebody that had dove the wreck. And I did one of the Andrea Doria on the bottom. I don't know if you recognize his name, but his name is John Chatterton.
Okay.
He's a shipwreck diver. Him and Richie Kohler. They did shadow divers for a number of years. It was a special about shipwreck diving. But I did it for John Chatterton and kind of a not a current view of it, but what it maybe looked like in the early '80s. Kind of a conceptual. What would it have looked like? Because it was so much more intact at that point. So I did that for him. But other than that, the Fitzgerald drawing that I did of the ship fighting through the storm, and I've done a few of them. The one I did recently, within the last year, of what I call it, "Gales of November Remembered," right out of the song. It's become my most popular drawing. Period. Not just the fits, but everything. And I think because I put so much emotion into it and um, uh, so much effort into recreating what maybe it looked like on the lake that night when the Fitz is battling through a storm. And excuse me, and adding in the distance a tiny little white speck that represents the Arthur M. Anderson watching over the Fitz. Putting that level of detail in. And anytime anybody picks up one of those prints, I do point that out because it might be something that they just don't know that's there. But to that end, I don't have any interest in drawing a destroyed shipwreck. Like people, hey, would you draw that fits on the bottom? No, I don't. That doesn't interest me. It doesn't interest me to do that. I want to show her the way she was. You know, uh, am I fascinated with the wreck? Absolutely. I'm fascinated with all aspects of it. Not just the shipwreck itself, but why it happened, and what circumstances led to the loss. Um, and it's a very touchy subject because there are so many opinions and so many theories. Um, you know, there's so many things that there's so all the theories to me have something that says this is what happened, that has merit. But there's also in the same theory that says, well, maybe why is this like this then if it happened this way? There's so many different things that that are a factor as to why it happened. You know, the great mystery is, is what's the Titanic? We know the Titanic hit an iceberg. We know what caused it to sink. The circumstances about the breakup and all that stuff, that'll be debated until the end of time. But we know what caused it to sink. With the Fitzgerald, we don't know for sure. You know, all the theories out there that that have merit. They all do. Um, I know, and people are very passionate about the theories that are put forth. That they are convinced that this is what happened, and this is you will not ever convince them otherwise. And I didn't mean to get into a whole Edmund Fitzgerald discussion here either.
Oh, this is
But
fine.
I
That's
guess we're
fine.
there now.
Could you
I guess we're there now, so we might as well go on it a little bit. But
yeah.
uh, you know, I look at every theory as I always tell people when they come into my booth, you are free to, you are free to, I had a call, I have to cancel. Um, you're free to subscribe to any one of those theories that you like because, first of all, no one witnessed it. There was no Mayday call. There were no survivors. The only links we have to it were the Arthur M. Anderson behind them and the wreckage that they recovered. There's nothing else that
What Bernie
that
Cooper may have,
yeah,
thought about.
and I agree. There's things that I agree with. You know, I listen to Rick Mixer all the time. I listen. John Bacon's come up with his book, which is very good. Fred Stonehouse, but then um, all these different authors and historians, they have maybe a little bit different a view of it. And what happened. And now Rick's been to the wreck. Rick's been there, so he has the best, I would say, firsthand experience as to what he saw and why things may have ended up the way they did. There's the theory I subscribed to for a long time was the grounding theory, and I was very again passionate about that. But I've also, I've changed my theories a little bit as time has gone on. I look at the freighter, the Michipicoten, that had a stress fracture going across Lake Superior, and I think maybe it wasn't the grounding, but maybe it was a stress fracture that caused, and I don't think it was one specific thing that caused it to go down. I think it was a combination of a few things. So what those things are, we won't get into that right now, but I think that again, most of the theories have something that you can very easily say, yeah, this is what happened, but why is this like this if this it happened to it this way? So there's really no concrete, this is the smoking gun and this is what happened. But I think we could get close. Um, we can get close to it, and without a proper site survey, it's not going to be something that maybe we ever really know about. And that's a huge, that's a very tough thing to talk about too, is the family members. Um,
Have you had
even the
family members, maybe with if it's have you ever had family members from your rec drawings reach out to you or be like, "Hey, or has that ever occurred or like,
no,
"Oh,
a few of the family members have a few of my pieces,
okay."
which is I'm very honored to have that. Um, but I've never had anybody specifically, call me out on anything.
Not call you out, but
But
just be like, it helped seeing this certain wreck. We had somebody who a loved one lost on this wreck. Have you ever had that where they just appreciate being able to see
oh
your work?
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's a lot of it is because, like I said, I like to show the way they were, in their prime, as opposed to, sinking or on the bottom. I think that might resonate with them a little bit more. Um, and I have, a couple of the family members do have the storm drawings. They do, and everybody reacts to things differently. So, one person, it's something that they want to have to remember, and other people don't want to have anything to remember it by. It was a painful thing, and they don't want to have that
Yeah.
constant everyday look on the wall. My dad or my uncle, they died on the Edmund Fitzgerald. They want to see that. So, but some people want that remember it. So yeah, it's the family. It's a very touchy subject with the families. Um, I Rick Mixer, he talks about wanting to go back to the wreck. And, you know, um, I think a site survey would be something that would help maybe identify certain things that might give us a better clue as to what happened. Um, but I'm also from my perspective, I've been a ringer at the ceremony at Whitefish Point. I did that for the family of Blaine Wilhelm. I did it for 3 years, in fact. And so I have also a personal connection to it, and I have to respect their point of view too. That um, they don't want maybe they don't want that to be brought back into the limelight again. So that's a very touchy subject. But I see it from both sides.
Yeah.
But as somebody that's fascinated with the wreck, what I like to know, I guess, as many others might want to know. It's been 50 years, almost 51 years now. But you have to respect the family's wishes too. So it's been declared a gravesite and off limits to diving. But I possibly maybe a sonar survey,
Yeah.
with the way they do things now, would help identify certain things, and maybe would identify the smoking gun. Maybe there's an outlier somewhere that we don't know about that what caused it. So, but
I've
again,
I've always
as
thought
of
that
this
too.
point, we don't know.
That there could be a total left fielder event or factor that played into its demise that we would never have even considered, without.
Yeah, very much. That's exactly. I do often mention that to people, that there might be something, the ship might have gone down a way that we never thought of it. But there is some evidence on the bottom. The way when Rick talks, the first two hatch covers are collapsed into the hold. They're not blown away, or they're not in place. They're collapsed into the hold. So there is definitely evidence to maybe what happened, but we don't have enough to say, first of all, this is why they're collapsed in, and this is why the wreck is the way it is. We can say, okay, the hatches are collapsed in. This is what could have happened, but not for 100% sure. I mean, obviously there was an external force, and then it doesn't. You don't just collapse hatch covers like that. Sheets of steel. So there's a reason why they're like that. But yeah, there is a lot of evidence there, but we just back in the 90s, the equipment to survey sites like that was not like it is now. It's so much more sophisticated, and high definition, things like that. Where back then it wasn't like that. You're poking around with it's basically like poking around with a flashlight, and hoping you stumble across something. And that's, Rick talks about they got lost on the wreck. They didn't know where they were, and that eats up time on the bottom, and they weren't able to see as much as they wanted to see. And so, yeah, but now you wouldn't have to go there. You could literally do a sonar image, and observe things that you may not have been able to find before. But that's up to the family members. When it comes down to it, it's kind of down to their wishes.
It's no doubt a difficult situation, like you said. How do you navigate this? You got all these differing views and opinions, and the family members, and just, oh, it's always, I think that's part of the allure. A lot of this, the Fitzgerald story is known so far, and then brings credence to all these other thousands of wrecks. Is the mystery
Yeah.
behind it, but it's fascinating. I love all of it. It's why I do the channel, and try to bring on people like you. I respect you completely. I appreciate your work and your insight that you've brought into this, because it's a passion, it's a love, and like you said, like Fred Stonehouse, Rick Mixter, Bruce Lynn, and many more I've had on. I respect Brendan Baylid, Jerry Feltner
And
was in.
Brandon too, I should mention him too. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that he goes way back too with all these other historians. And I mean, for Brendan, he's a guy that focuses on a lot of, I don't want to say obscure wrecks, but wrecks that aren't known well to people like us. They go after ships that they all have a story. They have a story to tell. And a lot of times their stories were never completely told. And I think that's really neat, that there are people out there that want to go and find these wrecks to complete their story. there are so many other shipwrecks out there other than the Evan Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, maybe, I mean, they have to know that there's other wrecks out there, but they look at the Fitz and it's the most popular wreck out there because of the song. And but there's so many other wrecks out there that should be found, because there's so much history, excuse me, that needs to be told with those, and then your story needs to be completed.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm gonna talk to you for another 3 hours if I don't get I just wanna
And I'd be
say
happy to.
I see, that's the thing, right, and my wife's gonna be like, "Are you still alive up there?" Like, "Oh, yeah, we've just been
Yeah.
talking, maritime war." Tony, I appreciate you so very much for coming on and sharing, like, with us with all this, and, I'm gonna get a Kamloops. I ain't letting you off the hook with that one. I love the Kamloops, I love the Anderson, but I'm a Kamloops freak because for me, it's the Fitzgerald for me that needs to be its story told because I love that wreck and everything about it. But where can people find you? Where can people support you, help you, and then what do you got coming up here that you want people to know about?
Well, if you want to follow me on Facebook, it is facebook.com/ Great Lakes Artist. You can find me that way. Um, you can also find me. Oh, excuse me, it's Great Lakes Artwork. That one's different. I've got a few that I've like other things that I set up. So Great Lakes Artwork is the one you can find me. I have a website. It is well, it's a little bit long, but Strublic Drawings.com. So basically my last name, Strublic, and then maritimedrawings.com. So you can see all the work I have. You can order right from the website too. You can order framed prints. I do have a possibility I might still have some originals on. I don't know for sure, but you can always check out everything I have there and check out a little bit more about me too. Also, let's see, my email, if for those of you that want that, this it's Great Lakes Artist at yahoo.com. So if you want to reach out to me that way, you can do that too.
Maybe if they
So
want a commission or something.
yeah, I do commission work. I work with many different sizes, and price wise, I offer a discount if you go a little bit larger on things. So, but I work by the square inch, so it's an easy way to figure out what your cost is going to be. And something I didn't maybe mention before, I maybe did, but I also build all my own frames and I do all my own matting. So everything is custom for you. So everything is a handmade piece of art. Um, so that's something I want to add to that too. As far as what I've got going on next, again, this weekend, I'm going to be in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, the Kohler Arts Center. They have their outdoor art show, and it's Saturday, Sunday, right downtown at the Kohler Arts Center, 10 to 5, and then 10 to 4. The following week, I'll be in Marquette, Michigan, and the Outback Art Fair, and that is on. It's at Picnic Rocks, Shiras Park. So I'm going to be up there. And then for the first time following that, I'll be at the Coast Guard Festival in Grand Haven, Michigan. And that's a first timer for me. So if you're in that area, please stop by. I don't know where I'm going to be at yet there, but I'm going to be at that show. So those are kind of the next 3 weekends for me.
Any, just for, so in case this, because I think it might be like a two-parter I do with this, episode because we did a lot of good stuff on here. What coming into the fall time, what do you got for maybe do you start slowing down in the fall, or is there any other stuff that you got coming up?
Well, my main season goes through Labor Day,
Okay.
so I'm working every weekend now until Labor Day and
Oh,
traveling. So put a lot of miles on the van. We were just in Wyandotte, Michigan. We were there from Tuesday. We got home on Sunday, so it was a long weekend. That's why I said we got to push it off a week because I'm going to be gone. But yeah, so in the fall. September, I'll have a few shows peppered in there. Trying to remember offhand what I all have there, but uh, so in October, I do have a couple up in Door County, or I have one in Door County. I have one at Sister Bay Fall Fest. It's a big 3-day show. The town goes from like 500 people to, 7, 8,000. So there's a lot of people there. But then as far as that goes, things really slow down. I have a Christmas show up in Marquette at the Superior Dome. I do that every year. It's a huge arts and crafts show. I've done that for many years now. But then I'm basically done until uh, well, you mentioned before, Brendan Baylod. He has the Ghost Ships Festival in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and that's always, I believe, I'm trying to remember when that is. The end of, I think it's like the first part of April, I believe, if I remember right. Or no, excuse me, March. It was the first part of March. So that, and then my season starts up again in Memorial Weekend. So, and then I'm 20 some shows straight through almost. So yeah, so that's kind of what's coming up for me, and then how my season goes.
Okay. Oh, awesome, Tony. I've appreciated all this. I've enjoyed talking so much with you on this. I would love to have you on again in the future sometime. And just
Yeah,
thank
absolutely. Be
thank
happy
you.
to.
I everybody, Songs of the Great Lakes followers, please give Tony a like. Check out his stuff, and do go to one of these shows. It's just bring a fan though, because I about melted in there. I'm not blaming you, but I about
Yeah,
melted.
it was warm there. Well, it was in Wyandotte. We were in the upper 80s and humid, and it was a long week. It's a long show hours too are long there. It's 10 to 9 every day, and it's a long day. But and today, we're dealing. We've got 100 degrees here, and heat index into almost 110. So thankfully, we're not doing anything outside right now. I don't know how we would do it, but it's supposed to cool down for the weekend a little bit, maybe in the 80s. But yeah, so yeah, definitely prepare for weather, any type of weather. Make sure you have an umbrella if it's going to rain, and because it honestly, rain doesn't stop people. It doesn't. It does not stop people. So
Oh, we're a Great Lakes state. We're freighter country here. We've been
yeah,
through storms.
yep.
Thank you, Tony. I thank you so very much. It's been a
You're
pleasure
welcome.
having you on.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.